even though $15,000 is very inexpensive compared to an ARRI camera or a RED camera even, and from the specs and the lab test results that we got also in dynamic range and everything, it's a very, very capable camera that can definitely compete with a lot of those cameras in the high end. But the problem never was that it's not so much the price, the purchase price of a camera that is an argument to change the system. Especially 15,000 is a good price compared to those, but it's not something that would be, because people also compare this, of course, to arguably lower end cameras like an FX9 and so on. But 7,000, I mean, this raises eyebrows. I think this raises eyebrows, and you have a camera that's definitely not an owner-operated camera. It's something that is made for a crew. And if people now with this price, I mean, you can just, the producer will probably just buy this for a production company and just ask people to use it on the next production, or try it on a small production, like a production house that makes I know a lot of production houses that shoot TV series and really then they always work with Alexa or Red, but they also shoot commercials or they also shoot on TV, and the producer might just say, well, actually, we just bought this. Do you want to please use this one on the commercial? And that's kind of a test case. And then when it works for them, workflow-wise, and the whole ecosystem makes sense, they might just move it up in the production.
What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD newsroom with Nino Leitner and Johnny Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to CineD Focus Check episode 50. Closing into a year. How are you, Johnny?
I'm fine. Nino, how are you?
Good. We are...
Episode 50. It's amazing, huh? Like we started, we pushed the button, and we never stop.
We never stopped. And
we never go for vacations anymore.
We're still in a provisional background, which we need to change.
Can you promise me that for the 100 we will have a different background? This is ridiculous.
Promise it's earlier.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Great.
But anyway, if you're listening to this, the background doesn't matter. But today, we're actually going to do... It's part of a feedback episodes and also talking about the price drop body only version of the URSA Cine 12K LF and how that actually maybe or maybe not relates to the Alexa 35 base model.
Is it me, or it's a feeling that suddenly everybody's dropping prices or looking for creative ways to drop prices? What's going on?
I think that's a smart way of putting it. I think it's a creative way of dropping prices. But before we talk about the URSA base model or the URSA body only, let's talk about a little bit of feedback to last week's episode.
There was a lot of feedback. First of all, let's just talk about the scenario, because ARRI actually took the Alexa 35 and suddenly showed a base model. And this base model could do some basic stuff, which might be very good for many. This is for what, 50,000?
Well, let's be clear, it's the same hardware. It's identical.
No, hey, there's a blue button.
Yeah, but it's...
Okay, everything is the same.
That's the other, like technically it's exactly the same.
Exactly the same. And technically exactly the same. Probably a different framework to allow...
Sure, certainly.
Yeah, to allow a little bit of, adjustable, or people can buy licenses if they want to add some features. But for the base model, how much was $50,000 US? Yep. And then there's a price list for renting or acquiring licenses for whatever. And we said it can be daily, weekly, monthly, or permanently. Yeah, and that will bring, if you buy everything, it will bring you to the premium model, which is around, I can't remember.
The premium model is exactly 20,000 more.
More, okay, good.
So it's either you buy permanently all those licenses and it will cost you 20,000 and you end up with a premium model, or you just buy the premium model outright.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we talked about the ins and outs and what's the benefits, and
many,
of course
many comments.
Got a lot of comments. I mean, let's start with some of the comments we had also on the announcement article of the Alexa 35 base model. There's some interesting stuff here. I mean, of course, there's always people saying like, why would you pay so much money for a camera? And then there's others arguing against it. And I think everybody's right, because our industry is vast and people work in different areas of the industry. If you work in motion picture or serial, fictional, it's very common to work with ARRI cameras, and they're usually rented and they're usually not owner operated in most cases. So, like I don't think there's a right and wrong here at all. But Joe DeSantis commented, as someone who has been in this industry for 15 years, I still have not heard a good reason why people should even use ARRI cameras. At this point, they are robbing their customers. A $50,000 camera that is still paywalled, that should be illegal. Okay, and then
no, come on, that's
yeah. But a reply by Sean Lovelace. What industry? Motion pictures, commercials, independent content, E&G, those are different things, and I agree. The Alexa 35 is not just a camera, it's part of an ecosystem and very reliable in extreme conditions. With most consumers not being able to tell the difference to an would most consumers be able to tell the difference to an FX3? Probably not. But will commercial clients demand to know why you cheaped out and chose a less reliable product on that $400,000 job? The after discount $1,200 day rate means very little in the context of a very larger production. I think we talked about this. I think that's a good argument. It's like, it doesn't matter. Not that it doesn't matter, but for a big production, you are choosing the reliable camera because that's a drop in the bucket. It's less than what a skilled crew member might cost you per day, depending on the position.
Yes, but I don't think that companies or production companies are pouring money anymore into productions, and I think every cent counts. So at the end of the day, you know what? I'll say something completely different. We are consuming the end result on what? On smartphones, on tablets, on laptops. Do you see the difference at the end of the day? I mean, we understand the reliability. We understand why to use ARRI. But when it comes to the visual aspect, and we know, first of all, that content is the king, but let's just talk about the visual. We are consuming it on completely different with what we did many years ago. Yeah, of course, there's still cinema and so on, but we see the trend. So the question is if there is justification to invest so much money on the camera.
Every camera just gets better all the time, right? That's the thing. I mean, like the differences become less and less visible. That's but it's not that. I don't think the reason is that the devices we use are lower quality. It's more like the quality just gets better overall, even for cheaper cameras. So, of course, it gets harder to argue. But I think one point that he also made later down in this comment is that, I mean, ARRI is really, I mean, a lot of it is about service and a lot is about, like I've never had another camera company, he writes, call me up and ask me how I'm settling in and if I have any feedback to give. I think it's very crucial that if you look at all the camera manufacturers in the market, who are the only ones that really come from filmmaking and where filmmakers are their only clients? I can only think of ARRI and Red. What other companies have started with filmmakers? You know what I mean? It's like, Sony does a million different things, Canon does a million different things, Panasonic does a million different things, Fuji does, Blackmagic Design comes from post-production. Not that they don't care about this market. They do. That's why they're investing in it. But the core thing, the people they always talk to are the people on set when it comes to ARRI and Red. And of course, that's worth something. I mean, that also goes into the
Who will remember this if ARRI cannot make business? That's my question. And the thing is, and that's for me kind of, I don't want to sound rude in any way, but the bottom line is, can they sell enough cameras or not in order to sustain the business? And I'm not saying I have no clue how is their financial situation. I don't know how many cameras they are selling a year. All I can see is that obviously they found a very creative way to drop the price. Can you agree? Can we agree on this? And no company will drop a price if there is no need for it.
Well, I think part of the problem is simply that we know, and we've talked about this last week as well, is that the high-end industry seems to be massively under pressure right now. I've had a call with a manufacturer from our industry just a few days ago, a private call, and he was very open to me that it's a very difficult time, especially for smaller companies in the industry, and they need to diversify. They need to find ways of actually catering to also broader markets and branching out to. That's why you see so many companies suddenly also going into photography and trying to make smartphone accessories and that, because if you so far have only catered to the high-end industry, it doesn't matter if you make a camera or any accessory or any light or whatever, you need to find ways to broaden this, because everybody's saving money right now. That's kind of like the aftermath of all the strikes and all the everything in the high end. It's just like people try to make as much as they can with what they have and not necessarily buy new equipment. And it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult for anybody economically right now. But yeah, like, it's as true for the big manufacturers as it is for smaller ones. You need to find ways of sustaining the business. And I think there's been a couple of years that have been extremely successful for them over the COVID times, when people were arguably consuming a lot more content than they used to, even if it's at home. But still, there was so much production, and now everything is kind of collapsing. The streaming giants are reducing budgets. People are not going to the cinemas as much as they used to. And then the strikes on top of this, and it's difficult. Yeah.
Beyond the smiles of any salesperson from any company, I really hope that we can get to the bottom of this topic, either by interviews, honest interviews, or let's see. I mean, there are a few big exhibitions just ahead of us. Hopefully we can catch some key people and talk to them. I really hope that we can find and dig a bit more. And it's not a matter of to try to demoralize everybody. It's more about we care about the company, we care about ARRI. It's just very interesting to take them as a test case. A small company that's doing high-end cameras for the pinnacle of our market, and just to see a year from now, 5 years from now, where they're going to be with what they offer, and if they will have to adjust with time. That's it. Because even companies like, Mercedes and BMW, they have high-end cars, but they also have the A-Class and other cars which are for me, So I think selling only to the high-end market might be very tough. We both know this. But let's see how they will proceed. But you want to read some more comments? Because it's very interesting, the conversation. I find the conversation fascinating.
With lots of comments, especially on the YouTube video, if you're interested in the topic of last week's episode. A few that I wanna just highlight. AC from Munich commented that he doesn't agree with, and he put the time code. That's when you talked about that it's very hard for people, for younger generation, to get in touch with ARRI products, to actually get trained on them. And he says he doesn't agree with that, because he would argue younger generations grow with ARRI cameras on set. No DP buys an Alexa 35 and sets foot on a set for the first time. People grow with an ARRI camera, for instance, as a PA and an AC. I don't think it should be the goal for anyone to buy an ARRI camera, because you will never see the return or rotation or use that a rental house does. Neither can you offer all the accessories for each film. That's true. I mean, that's the thing, right? I think it's to invest in a camera like this is probably not even such a good idea, because we know...
As an independent, you mean?
Also because it would only make sense to invest in something like this. Either you're working kind of 24/7 with your gear, which is unrealistic, because if you get booked on films with an Alexa 35, usually the production companies have deals with rental houses where they rent a lot more stuff, and then of course they get a very good daily rate. Of course you can try to kind of rent yourself out with the camera and then give them a better rate, but very often that's not so easy. I mean, for people who've tried this, they will find out that's not so easy, because of course they would kind of interfere with the deals that the production house has with a bigger rental house, where they get a lot more equipment. And trying to interfere with that is, on one hand, a bit frowned upon, because the rental house has different interests, but also you usually simply cannot compete because you don't have as much equipment, and you can never supply the full package that they need, because the camera package that you rent is different for each production. I think a lot of people are just in love with the ARRI image, and then they just playing around with this dream of owning one. But in reality, I mean, who owns an ARRI Alexa, unless you probably, shoot a lot of... You certainly have the ability to get booked with your gear all the time. But I think for high-end sets, that's very unlikely, because usually rental houses have deals with production companies. So actually the day rate is very low because the whole package that they rent is much bigger. And I think it's very hard to compete with that as a individual. That's what I said last week. I also don't think it's so aspirational for ARRI to make a camera that's so cheap that everybody can buy it, because they simply haven't been in this market so far. But
I understood the argue of capacity, like making many cameras suddenly, but other than that, I think they will have no choice. They will have, if they want to exist, and I'm saying this just from my guts feeling, if they want to exist, they will have to find ways to sell many more cameras. There's a limit of how many units you can sell to the high end. It's very simple. So actually, I would like to see, because we have a lot of comments from users, actually DPs that are used ARRI, Alexa, Amira, and others. And later on, they also touched other cameras from Red, from Canon, and from Sony, and so on. I would love to hear more from those people, if this is really an essential tool for them on set, or they could comfortably live with cameras from other manufacturers, and we know that the end results, or they know if the end results was as good as they expected. Just in terms of, we talk about usability, we talk about being comfortable with a certain camera. That will be very interesting to hear more people that actually have the experience of working on set with ARRI camera and then with other cameras from other brands.
I think a lot of things come down to the next steps from Red will be interesting, because Red is arguably the only other brand that has some kind of significant foothold on these high-end productions, and to a much lesser degree, maybe Sony with a Venice. But Red is there. They're already kind of in Hollywood, with these high-end productions. So let's see what they do and how they, if at all, they react to this.
But that also brings us to Blackmagic Design, no? Like in a way.
In a way, yes. But let's just check if we still have, because you said before this argument about the high-end cars that I can't find the comment, but somebody also commented on high-end cars, and it's a good argument, because you have all those high-end brands of cars, that many of which were sold to lower-end brands, kind of like, I think Ferrari is owned by Fiat, or I don't know.
Well, Fiat is owned by a bigger concern now, but anyway, I think the car industry in general is, we can see the changes over there.
Yeah, the Maybach is owned by Mercedes and so on.
So if the camera industry want to look at an example, that's a good way, because we know what happened with the car industry. The Chinese came from kind of nowhere, because you didn't need a petrol engine anymore, and they caught up very, very quickly. So we talked about this also last time, and I don't want to repeat too much, but we talked about DJI. What will happen if DJI will come with a proper either camera or a line of cameras, if they will disrupt the market, and probably they will disrupt it very badly.
Let's see, I saw also a comment from Frank Glenkern, who I know, who I've shot with before. Hi, Frank. A cheap-ish ARRI is, in my opinion, not going to happen. The only point they have over other cameras is the ALEF sensor. If they use the same sensor in a cheap camera, why would you buy a $50,000 to $70,000 camera or a Euro camera if you get the same sensor for $20,000? If they build a camera with, let's say, a Sony sensor, why would anybody buy that? For the ARRI sticker, I don't think so. That's a good argument, of course. That's the thing, right? You devalue your high-end thing, and that's exactly what they're trying to avoid now with this base model, where you just buy features. It's a way of dropping the price with the same sensor, but not really, like offering a fully spec'd camera for less money.
I'm going to stick to what I said before. All of those are all valid comments. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and a business needs to survive and earn. And I want to see how ARRI will do 5 years from now. That's it. The market is changing. We can't ignore it.
There was a good other comment that actually might be a way out for them. If you look at the ALEF 3 sensor, the predecessor, that's still in many of their cameras, maybe they should look into that sensor is still being used on sets every day. People are very happy with the images, and now they're arguably replacing step by step their cameras with a new sensor at some point. Right now, I think it's only in the Alexa 35. Even the Alexa 265 uses the ALEF 3 or a version of it. But if the ALEF 4 comes into all their other models, why not make a cheaper camera with the old sensor that still is so popular and still so good also in comparisons to others, right? and then you have something that's still different from your high-end models, but you can make something for less money, maybe?
Then the question will be if people in the high-end market will still buy the high-end camera. I think they might still, but then of course it opens the possibility for, let's call it the medium tier, to use ARRI's cameras. Yep, let's see.
Yeah, somebody else commented that I'm old, and what comes with being old is a sense of history. Your video has made me wonder how ARRI, a company that I love, by the way, has come to the place of only making cameras for elitist filmmakers. Back in the 60s and 70s, their cameras were priced higher than most, but still somewhat affordable. Of course, film cameras. I mean, the real cost here was the film, not the camera. They had the RES and the 16BL and the 35 2C. Now, when I see an ad that says new budget-friendly camera from ARRIFlex, I haven't seen that ad though. Maybe he's making fun of our cheeky title of last week's episode. I have to chuckle. Budget-friendly for who? Bill Gates. A $35,000 camera is not budget-friendly camera, obviously. By the way, don't kill the messenger. I love you. Well, yes, we were of course making fun with this. I don't think you can really compare digital camera prices to film camera prices, because you essentially lost the cost for the medium, right? So that's a very, very difficult comparison to make, I think. It's not the same as it used to be. You also don't have all the laboratory costs anymore and all those things before you actually got to a point where you could edit something. So I think that's very different nowadays.
There's a very nice comment. Maybe you want to find it and read about what's good enough in those days. Yeah, it's about the majority of the market looking for efficiency and creativity, and sometimes with those big cameras it's very difficult. Yeah.
Should I read it?
Yes, please, because it's a very nice comment.
Yeah, great video. The entire industry.
This is from whom? Sorry.
Will Vasquez.
Okay,
32.
Will.
Yeah, Will. Great video. The entire industry is collapsing around us. That's dramatic. Especially the high-end industry. I used to have an Alexa Mini, sold it and bought a Sony FX3 and FX6. Yes, they don't have the image quality that these other cameras do, but they have autofocus and a lot of other great features. And you know what clients don't, care anymore. That, I guess he means that clients don't care anymore. We're in an era of good enough. We don't want to pay for more expensive camera, and the bigger camera requires more crew. That's a good argument, of course. Even the Sony Burano has been a complete flop. My local professional camera dealer says they sold 3 of them on pre-order, and since the camera was released last February, not a single order. And one of the local rental shops used to rent the Burano for $2,000 a day. Nobody rents it, so now they dropped the price to $500, and it still doesn't rent. I mean, $2,000 a day seems a bit excessive for that camera to me. I mean, it's a $25,000 camera. So usually, like the day rates, you say it's like a 40th of the purchase price. So 2,000 seems excessive. Of course, that might have been a full package with a lot of other stuff. That's, of course, it's impossible for us to know. I know a couple people who bought a Burano. Yes, arguably, we've talked about this before. It is not a cheap camera, and it sits kind of alone in this price bracket of 25,000.
Let's go for one more comment here. This is the one that I actually meant from Mike Nivek 11. It looks almost as good, or it's good enough, is an argument not only made by YouTubers, but also made by many producers and productions. I'm working DP based in New York, and I have to say it's getting tougher to give legitimate reasons to productions to justify hiring an ARRI camera over a Sony or Red. Sure, I'd love to use ARRI as often as I can, but jobs vary widely, and more projects tend to shoot with the Venice, FX9, FX6, FX3. I'd say less than 20% of my projects would absolutely need an Alexa Mini LF or Alexa 35. High-end productions like big studios, movies, and shows can certainly warrant ARRI cameras, but even then, lots of those productions have been using cameras like FX3 and Komodo because there are certain shots that are simply harder what is this, to pull off with a larger camera like ARRI Alexa 35. Anyway, he continues and talk about the majority of the market is looking for efficient and creative ways to film, and ARRI cameras require a bigger team and therefore more money. And we just talked about it, yeah. And this is, of course, means more effort that they might not be able to afford. Gone are the days when investors eagerly poured money into films. Nowadays, more than 2/3 of the media nowadays more than 2/3 of the media produced are consumed through smartphones and laptops. So an expensive Alexa camera isn't necessary. Yeah. So, I mean,
we almost see this. I feel like, like the high end is now getting hit by. They've kind of been excluded from this price battle that's been raging on for years in lower or mid-range cameras for a very long time, right? I mean, we've had this for a long time, and we've talked about that. Like it's becoming more difficult for manufacturers to place any camera above $10,000. And now it seems like it's even going lower slowly to 5,000, and that's why we see fewer and fewer cameras actually costing in this price bracket between 10,000 and 30,000. But now it seems like this high end has been excluded for a very long time, and now it seems like to be really embattled suddenly. Yeah,
that's why I'm very curious to see how Fujifilm will be pricing the GFX Eterna. Because that's going to be, since the camera was introduced 3 months ago, few things happened in the industry, including the one from Blackmagic Design that I want to talk about now.
We'll be back after this message from our sponsor.
1 Minute Tips by Fujifilm and CineD. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of overcast days, so exterior compositions tend to have the foreground underexposed, while the gray sky remains quite bright and with very few features. How should we deal with this? Well, the most straightforward way is to expose somewhere down the middle where foreground is slightly under and sky is over, and then try to compensate for this change in the color correction process. If you do have a clear subject and frame, we can also use some fill lighting to offset the work we would have to do in post. We can also use filtration. I don't see a lot of these anymore, but a gradient filter can sometimes give you a nice result, especially when there's a clear divide or horizon line. A polarizing filter can also enhance some contrast in the clouds, but can be hit or miss depending on conditions. And lastly, perhaps the hardest thing is just lean into it. Justify the atmosphere depending on the tone of your intended result by either letting the sky go completely gray or white, and maybe even adding a diffusion filter, creating a more ethereal feel, or underexposed to silhouette your subject and make it more moody. 1 Minute Tips. Until next time.
And now back to the show. Let's move on to the URSA Cine 12K LF price drop to, price drop. It's now body only for $7,000.
Which is insane. I mean, this is another way, an elegant way to sell the same camera or the same body, and we will touch about the differences in a second, at a much lower cost. I mean, we don't know the reason. We don't know if this is a very fast decision to react on something, or we don't want to speculate. But yeah, this is...
Just compare the prices. I mean, the original one was, or is, 15,000, so that's the full model. And now you have a body only.
Sounds like a base package.
Base package, exactly like the Alexa 35 for 7,000. So that's 8,000 less than half of the price of the full package.
And
now
we were raving about the sensor, and I mean, if you go to our site, our databases, and take a look at the lab test that we conducted with the camera, it's really good.
Yes,
it's. I mean, Blackmagic, I think maybe that's their best camera so far.
For sure. And just coincidentally, just a day before they announced this price drop, we published a guest article by Leon Bernard, who is a certified Blackmagic Design person. I mean, he's not employed by Blackmagic, but he's a, what is it called? They're, like certified people, colorists and so on. He's a very big expert on Blackmagic cameras, also has a very good YouTube channel. And he actually made a nice video about raving about how that sensor works, because it works differently. The whole Bayer pattern topic. I mean, it's really worth diving into if you're into that kind of stuff. And he explains why he thinks the Blackmagic's RGBW sensor is different and more advanced in his opinion than the sensors of any other manufacturer, and why it's so capable. And they made a half-hour video about this, and he also wrote a guest article. And just a day after we released that very good article, Blackmagic Design announced that base package kind of body only thing for $7,000. Now,
So what will be the main difference? Because obviously some things
Yeah.
are lost.
so just ahead of this podcast, actually, we tried looking into what's actually different, because the funny thing is, it's not like with ARRI where they are, like we were trying to find out, did they actually not include some of the features in the camera, but we just got confirmation that it's the same features inside the camera, software-wise. Software,
Exactly.
firmware is the same, right? So you can, anything that the $15,000 version that has more accessories can do, the $7,000 one can do as well. So that's the big difference to the Alexa 35 base model and premium model.
So the camera itself, the body, the hardware is exactly the same.
Exactly.
It's very important. And also the software is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, with ARRI, it's just the hardware. Here, it's software and hardware that's the same. But so where is the difference actually? So we tried to look at, actually, I went to the B&H website and I just tried to find out what the differences are in terms of what's included. Now, with the with the Blackmagic URSA Cine 12K LF camera, that the full package for $15,000, you have a little list here which says items included. And those items are, of course, the camera, couple things like mounts, and you have this media module, which is
that's on the expensive, on the full
yeah,
package.
that's what I just said. The $15,000 version includes the media module, 8 terabytes. It has it comes by default with PL. I think the body only is EF. It also comes with an interchangeable EF mount, so that is something you would have to purchase the PL version extra. You would have to purchase the media module, 8 terabyte extra, Cine handle, top rod mount, and the base plate, 19mm base plate. Then there's a couple of smaller things, body caps, Wi-Fi antennas. I think the Wi-Fi antenna is also included, but that's kind of it. I mean, it says DaVinci Resolve activation key. I'm not sure whether or not the body only version has DaVinci included. Usually, Blackmagic Design includes a license for DaVinci Studio, but in any case, it's $300, so that's not the end of the world if it's not included. But we tried to do the math here. So the most expensive accessory that's not included with the base model is that media model, that 8 terabyte media model, and that's $1,700 if you purchase it separately. So then you have the base plate. The 19mm base plate is around $600. So that's like $2,300. Even if the license for DaVinci is not included, under $300, $2,600. Couple bits and pieces, probably, let's be generous here, another $1,500. You're still far off from that difference, right? So we so far we're not able to find out whether those $8,000 difference actually, if you bought all the accessories that are not included with the body only version, if you bought them separately, if you would actually end up with $15,000. I think you would end up with a lot less still, right? Like even if you bought everything individually, you might be at 11,000 or something like that, which is quite interesting. So it seems like to me as if that is also an elegant way of dropping the price.
I want to talk about the main difference or the main element here, which is actually different from the full package. And this is the model that you were talking about, this 8 terabyte model. So the main difference here is really the media model. This one will be a CF Express type model, like 2 slots that you will be able to put into the camera. It comes with the body only. And the physical size of it is exactly the same like the 8 terabyte model. So basically, you'll be able to take it to the dock model and so on.
So it's basically just 2 slots for CF Express Type B cards, as opposed to having a kind of proprietary 8 terabyte thing
That's
that
right. And
is only working with this camera.
I mean, I like it. I like it better, actually, to tell the truth, that you can literally use CF Express cards. What we cannot confirm, I mean, we know, it seems as if you will be able to use all the resolutions and all the frame rates.
In Blackmagic RAW.
In Blackmagic RAW.
Not all the frame rates.
Not all the frame rates?
Well,
It seems.
we don't know. I mean, we had a good comment actually. We reached out to Blackmagic Design. They haven't been able to actually give us an answer yet on this. Probably by the next episode we will have it. But so somebody asked the question: can the CF Express handle all the same resolutions, frame rates as the 8 terabyte model? And one of our loyal readers, William Young, replied, no. Type B version 4 has a maximum write speed of 3 gigabytes per second, whereas the media module can hit speeds of over 4 gigabytes per second. At 12K OpenGate at 224 frames per second requires 4 gigabytes per second. So currently Type B cannot hit the data rates required for the fastest frame rates, but beyond which currently it would be more expensive than their 8 terabyte media model. A quick search, which is a very good argument, showed that currently two 2 terabyte CF Express Type B cards with 4 terabyte in total would run one around $990 currently. 2 sets of those 8 terabyte would be $1,980. Whereas the 8 terabyte media model is $1,700. With that said, BM3 port dock is almost $2,000, just a dock to read, as they don't currently offer a single unit adapter. That would mean one is using the camera as a dock or have to carry around that oversized dock. It might actually be more beneficial to grab a second URSA Cine to use as the media dock as well as a B cam, as it isn't that much larger than the media dock, but it offers additional functionality. So long story short, we don't know if where is the cutoff. So it seems like you are able to record even 12K Blackmagic RAW. Again, we haven't had a chance to test that, of course, with CF Express Type B. But we don't know where is the highest frame rate that those cards can sustain and what is the maximum write speed that the camera is actually able to do. On specs, it should be around 3 gigabytes per second.
What it looks as if, I mean, right now we have a wave of CF Express card Type B version 4 coming to the market, which are obviously faster, can sustain a higher data rate in and out. But there are no hardware. None of the cameras that we know of are actually supporting that standard. So I don't think that this camera is supporting, but we don't know. Yeah. So if the camera can support version 4 of a CF Express card Type B, of course, the frame rates will benefit from it.
But what's interesting, I mean, again, same as the ARRI decision. If you look at it, of course, it's a smart move because I think one of the more difficult things for Blackmagic that they were trying to sell, other than getting people to really invest in a new camera system, was to also, whether they liked it or not, kind of trying to establish a new media format that nobody knows, that is really specific to that camera. And that's always difficult because they are really gearing for the high end here. They want to get this camera on high end sets. But that also means not only changing the camera department, but also the whole workflow. And then you need to convince the DIT and the post-production house to suddenly work with this very large media module, and then have to buy this dock. And it's not so much the investment, because we saw in William's breakdown that actually, like money-wise, it makes sense. It's not super expensive, but just it's a bit inflexible, of course. You will always only just have a couple of those on a set. And there might always be a case where there's not enough there, and you can't. So far, you couldn't just take a CF Express card, and now suddenly they bring a version of the camera on the market that doesn't even have the dock, but just uses CF Express Type B. Maybe also, I mean, if this supports version 4 of CF Express, maybe that's something we also should ask Blackmagic. If it does support it, maybe that's why they didn't include it in the first version of the camera, because maybe by that time it was announced, the new standard wasn't out yet, and maybe now the readers actually support CF Express Type B version 4, and those, because of the higher data rates, now make sense for this camera. Maybe that's also part of the reason. But in any case, I mean, basically now you have a much more affordable camera with a much more commonplace media system, which of course makes it a much more attractive proposition for a lot of productions.
Absolutely, because when we were testing the URSA Cine 12K here at the studio with the 8 terabyte module, we were really, I was spitting blood, because at the end you don't want to use the camera, you don't want to make it kind of not functional, you need to move it always to this big
Bulky dog.
yeah, exactly. And then what? I mean, also on set, it will not make so much sense as long as there is no single unit like that. So now with the appearance of this body-only version, when you can use the CF Express card Type B, makes so much more sense, so much easier, so much more appealing to independent filmmakers, I think.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it before when we talked about the lab test and in general the camera, is that even though $15,000 is very inexpensive compared to an ARRI camera or a RED camera even, and from the specs and the lab test results that we got also in dynamic range and everything, it's a very, very capable camera that can definitely compete with a lot of those cameras in the high end. But the problem never was that, like I said before, when we talked about the ARRI Alexa base model, it's not so much the price, the purchase price of a camera that is an argument to change the system. Especially 15,000 is a good price compared to those, but it's not something that would be, because people also compare this, of course, to arguably lower end cameras like an FX9 and so on. But 7,000, I mean, this raises eyebrows. I think this raises eyebrows, and you have a camera that's definitely not an owner-operated camera. It's something that is made for a crew. And if people now with this price, I mean, you can just, the producer will probably just buy this for a production company and just ask people to use it on the next production, or try it on a small production, like a production house that makes I know a lot of production houses that shoot TV series and really then they always work with Alexa or Red, but they also shoot commercials or they also shoot on TV, and the producer might just say, well, actually we just bought this. Do you want to please use this one on the commercial? And that's kind of a test case. And then when it works for them, workflow wise, and the whole ecosystem makes sense, they might just move it up in the production. So that's kind of this way. This is such a price breaker that I think, and we've seen this in general with cameras below $10,000, that also TV broadcasters, I work a lot in documentary, you see a lot of broadcasters buying FX6, FX9, whereas it didn't used to be the case when cameras cost more than 10,000.
But those have an advantage of autofocus and so on.
No, but in general, I mean, I'm not talking about that. It's just basically production companies trying to force shooters to use their equipment has become very commonplace in this mid-range and documentary thing. And it might just be something that with a camera that capable, that they're also trying to push this up into the higher end productions where prices are also under pressure.
So I'm very curious to know, if you already bought the Blackmagic Design URSA Cine 12K camera for $15,000, how do you feel now? Because obviously maybe you had already some of the accessories and the body only would have been a good options for you. So please share with us, because I'm sure you're happy with the performance. We know the performance is good. We keep hearing it from people who tested the camera, but economically speaking, you just spent $15,000. How do you feel now?
One thing I think that we can share that we're trying to find out in the background, and this is kind of completely independent of this, but we've been approached by a DP friend of ours who had the idea to try and find out whether an image from Blackmagic raw image, either from a Blackmagic camera or a raw image recorded with a Blackmagic Video Assist, can be debayered using a different log, not the, for example, trying to find out whether you can use ARRI log C from a different camera, either a Blackmagic camera or a Sony camera or Panasonic camera or Canon or whatever, and then make it look as close as possible to an Alexa. That's what we're currently trying to find out, because of the way that debayering only happens with Blackmagic RAW in post and not on camera. In theory, this should be possible, right? This should be possible to make it look 99.9% the same. And we're just trying currently to find out whether that is the case or not. And we might run an experiment with that in the near future. But, we're reaching out to Blackmagic and some others. It's an interesting concept, right? Because that would mean if this whole debayering, of course, the debayering is not the only way of making that image, but it's a big chunk of it. And if you're able to kind of iron out those differences in the sensor, the inherent sensor looks, this might be quite close, the end result image, to what you get from an Alexa.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good, Nino. Anything
Yeah.
else? I think we covered both of those cameras. A new wave of announcement, of course, will come soon.
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up here for
yeah.
this week. We'll probably talk about more news next week again. And yeah, thank you, Johnny.
Thank you, Nino.
Thanks, everybody, for watching.
guys.
Stay tuned to CineD for more episodes of CineD Focus Chat podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and like our podcast and comment on the podcast on either the YouTube video, or send us an email to podcast@cined.com. Or, just comment on the videos. We always appreciate it. And as you saw in this episode, we're also talking about those comments. And give us a like, send it to your friends, and listen to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.